two families would have been worked out. But I'm curious about the sleeping arrangements here, because what you had was an 18-year-old girl, a young.
We are recording this on Friday, June 26th of 2026. Our guest today is Dr. Lisi Dobson, a clinical and forensic psychologist and host of Intentionally Disturbing on YouTube. The judge called him a psychopath, not in a moment of political theater, not in an off-the-record whisper. In a federal courtroom on the record, Judge Edwin Torres looked at the evidence and said, Timothy Hudson's alleged actions suggest a level of psychopathy and lack of remorse that by itself raises a serious concern that Timothy can snap at any time.
Florida. The victim here is 18-year-old Anna Kempner, and the accused is her stepbrother. 16-year-old Timothy Hudson. He is charged with first-degree murder and sexual assault, and he will be tried as an adult. When he was initially...
I'm a forensic psychologist, and I have worked in criminal litigation for a long time. So when mental health intersects with the law, and I do a lot of civil litigation as an expert witness now, and predominantly, I deal with sex crimes, murder, and trauma. So both sides, plaintiff and defense. Here's the visual anchor for everything that follows. Picture a cabin door on a Carnival cruise ship directly across the hall from the parents' room. Behind that door, an 18-year-old woman is dead, wrapped in a blanket and shoved under a bed. Behind that same door, a 13-year-old boy sleeps through the night. And across the hall, the parents, the father of the victim, and the mother of the accused sleep completely unaware. That cabin door is the dividing line between what a family thought they knew and what the evidence would eventually reveal. They were across the hall from hell and they didn't even know it.
Especially the kind of sexual assaults that happen on cruise ships, and or people disappear and supposedly either jump or are pushed, right? And the body is never recovered. These cases are so hard to investigate. They are even harder to prosecute because of jurisdictional issues as to where exactly the crime happened. So, I was like, wow, that is why this is a federal case.
Right. It is so complicated.
Oh my goodness. Really complicated. Okay. So let's get back to the couple here. So they married in December of 2024, and Christopher brought Anna and 3 siblings into this new union. Chantel brought her 3 children, an adult son, as well as Timothy and a 9-year-old daughter, all from these previous relationships, which, I was going to use the term the Brady Bunch, but I realize, so many people are not even going to know what that reference is.
I don't think a lot of people know what Saved by the Bell is anymore. And that is so sad for me.
I know, it's really sad. Like I have limits now on how I can communicate things to people since my references are being reduced. So on November 2nd of 2025, the family departs Miami for this week-long cruise through the Caribbean. Now, the guests include Christopher and Chantel, mom and dad, Christopher's parents, so that would be Anna Kepner's grandparents, her 2 younger siblings, along with 2 of Chantel's children. So many children. Okay, and everybody's like mixed in and
this family had been living together, this newly blended family for about a year. So by the time they took this big family cruise, I would think that I don't know some of the difficulties of blending. 2 families would have been worked out. But I'm curious about the sleeping arrangements here, because what you had was an 18-year-old girl, a young woman, a 16-year-old boy, not related to her, and then a half-brother of hers who was, a minor all in this cabin. And I know that the family has been criticized online that they should have never put that configuration of male-female together in a small cabin. There were a lot of red flags, but I think the question, and we'll find this out in trial, is if they were aware of the red flags, because you wouldn't assume a rape and a murder would occur by putting your 3 teens together. Right. That doesn't happen often, but we have now learned of a lot of red flags with the alleged rapist and killer. Let's rewind to the red flags, because they existed long before the cruise ship left Miami. Court records show that Anna Kempner was so uncomfortable with her stepbrother Timothy that she told her boyfriend about it. The boyfriend told police that Timothy was obsessed with Anna, that he'd catch Timothy staring at her, and that there was a FaceTime incident where Anna fell asleep and Timothy climbed into her bed. Anna didn't tell her parents about that. But the red flags didn't stop there. Timothy was isolated at school. He kept to himself. There were custody battles, allegations of untreated mental health issues, and a family dynamic so fractured that by the time they all boarded the Carnival ship, they were a ticking time bomb disguised as a family vacation. And the judge would eventually say Timothy could snap at any time, but the question no one asked is whether he'd already been winding up for a year.
That he enters the cabin 2 more times, at 10:23 and 10:49, and then Timothy exits the cabin at 10:53 after placing a privacy sign on the front door. Now, he returned at 11:07, and a few minutes later, Anna's younger half-brother returns at about 11:21, and that's when, the 13-year-old's visit lasted only 2 minutes, and he told authorities he didn't see Anna's body. Well, I shouldn't say body. He didn't see Anna at the time. So the 13-year-old has no idea where Anna is, but she wasn't in the room. But of course, authorities say, oh, she was in the room. She was dead at this point, and she had been, stowed away. So when the youngest sibling finally returns shortly after midnight, and it's time, to go in, he is blocked. Timothy blocks the door and says, you can't come in, I'm changing. Mm-hmm. Okay. So he sits out there, and you see this on the...
It's 7:35. Security cameras captured Timothy entering the cabin. 2 minutes later, Anna enters the cabin. This is the last time that security cameras captured her alive, meaning she could have still been alive, and there will be a little testimony of that when her 13-year-old half-brother comes in, but it's the last time that she's seen alive on cameras. So it's 7:51, about 20 minutes later. Anna's younger half-brother is walking the hallways near the cabin, is with 2 friends, and he enters the room briefly, and the 13-year-old told authorities Anna seemed fine. Okay, so that's where we come up with, we know that she was alive at 7:51. That's the last time we know she was alive. By 10:13, Timothy opens the cabin door. And this one, now I found this interesting. They describe how he opens the door, looks both ways, and then continues on his route. Here's the timeline prosecutors built using the ship's surveillance cameras, the same cameras that would eventually tell the digital forensic story. Anna enters the cabin at 7:37 p.m. Her 13-year-old half-brother sees her at 7:51. She seems fine. By 10:13 p.m., Timothy is on camera opening the cabin door and looking both ways. Not a casual glance, not a quick check. He looks both ways like he's checking for witnesses. At 10:49, he enters again. At 10:53, he exits and places a privacy sign on the door. At 11:07, he returns. At 11:21, the 13-year-old comes back and tries to enter, but Timothy blocks him, saying he's changing. The 13-year-old waits. The next morning, housekeeping finds Anna's body under the bed, covered by life vests. But here's the detail that makes this case feel like a thriller. The 13-year-old had slept in that room all night with Anna's body under the bed. He didn't know. That's the kind of detail that makes you ask, what would you do if you woke up and realized you'd been sleeping in the same room as a dead body?
And I again, love the security features here. What I found interesting is, why did he throw the phone away? Because ultimately, authorities so far have said in the court record that they didn't find anything on her phone or his phone that would indicate any problems. So why did he throw the phone away?
I mean, I think what we're seeing is, someone who's not very good at a crime. So we're seeing something probably more driven by emotion and maybe rage and retaliation, vengeance.
Yeah.
So not great thinking, right? We're getting some insight into his cognitive ability as well. If you're going to chuck a phone in the trash, why aren't you chucking it in the water?
You're at sea. No one's ever going to find this phone.
Right.
If you believe there's something on there that is damning or upsetting to you.
Right.
And I'm going to guess maybe there was something on there that maybe was upsetting to him, because as far as evidence goes, they're able to figure out a lot even without the phone. Okay, so let's talk about how they found the phone.
So the medical examiner boards the ship and does a preliminary exam, and Anna's body was found fully clothed, sweatpants, sweatshirt, and her underwear on. But the medical examiner said that the underwear had kind of been put on in a twisted manner and also shoved into her body, parts of it indicating a sexual assault. So, from your experience, did he undress her and dress her? Yes. I mean, she was found with pants fully on. Right. So, he had to put that back. So, we don't know if it doesn't sound like the underwear was ever fully off and that there was actually more violence to the rape. Yes. But then he goes and puts the pants back on. The autopsy confirmed it. Anna was sexually assaulted before she died. Timothy's semen was identified. The medical examiner found broken blood vessels in her eyes and face, significant bruising to her neck, and signs of mechanical asphyxiation. She was found fully clothed, sweatpants, a sweatshirt, underwear, but the underwear was twisted and shoved into her body. That means Timothy Hudson, according to prosecutors, not only raped and killed Anna Kempner, but then took the time to redress her body. Think about that. He pulled her pants back on. He arranged her clothing. He wrapped her in a blanket and shoved her under the bed. And then he placed life vests in front of the bed to block anyone's view. This wasn't a crime of pure panic. This was a crime with stages: rage, assault, murder, and then a calculated attempt to cover it up. But here's the thing. Timothy Hudson had snapped at any time, and the evidence shows he had plenty of time to think about what he'd done.
This is the last time that security cameras captured her alive, meaning she could have still been alive, and there will be a little testimony of that when her 13-year-old brother, half-brother, comes in. But it's the last time that she's seen alive on cameras. So it's 7:51. About 20 minutes later, Anna's younger half-brother is walking the hallways near the cabin. He's with two friends, and he enters the room briefly, and the 13-year-old told authorities Anna seemed fine. Okay, so that's where we come up with, we know that she was alive at 7:51. That's the last time we know she was alive. By 10:13, Timothy opens the cabin door, and this one, now I found this interesting. They describe how he opens the door, looks both ways, and then continues on his route. Now, authorities are using that as showing a presence of guilt. Now, I'll have to tell you, and maybe it's just me because I'm a crime reporter, but when I exit buildings or I exit hallways, I constantly do that because I'm always looking for someone coming at me, or if you only look one way, you don't know.
The only thing that everyone could be certain of based on the fact that Anna was killed after they left port is whoever killed Anna was still on that ship. That was the one definitive. But to think it was as close as your stepbrother in the same room. I know. Okay. So, to help with the investigation, and this I find so fascinating, the cruise ship has a lot of security cameras, and they're in the hallways. They're just about everywhere. And that has been incredibly helpful in this case. So, here's the timeline that prosecutors have put together. And this is what's in the court record. So, prosecutors believe that Timothy sexually assaulted and murdered Anna between 7:51 p.m. and 10:13 p.m. on November 6th. So, there's a window there, not a huge window. Here's where the case shifts from tragedy to detective story. Anna's phone was connected to the ship's Wi-Fi, so the routers tracked her phone's movement. Timothy didn't have a Wi-Fi plan, so his phone couldn't be tracked that way. But prosecutors married Anna's phone data to the surveillance footage, and they created a digital forensic map of Timothy's movements. The phone was eventually found in a lost and found bin on the opposite side of the ship, tossed in a trash can. But the camera near that trash can didn't capture the act itself. What it captured was Timothy in the vicinity at the right time. So the question becomes, if you're a 16-year-old who just committed murder on a cruise ship and you're trying to get rid of evidence, why wouldn't you throw the phone into the ocean? Why put it in a trash can on the ship? That question leads to a chilling conclusion. Timothy wasn't thinking clearly. He was thinking like someone who had snapped at any time and was now improvising, not a mastermind, just a teenager who made a catastrophic choice and then tried to outrun it.
So, shoved into her body, parts of it, indicating a sexual assault. So, from your experience, did he undress her and dress her?
Yes. I mean, she was found with pants fully on.
Right.
Right? So he had to put that back. So we don't know if it doesn't sound like the underwear was ever fully off and that there was actually more violence to the rape.
Yes.
But then he goes and puts the pants back on. Because of the way that she died, because of the mechanical asphyxiation, we're not looking at pinning someone down and raping them. Now we're looking at violently ending their life and raping them.
Yes. This was very violent.
Yeah. In haste as well.
Yes. Yes. It's so disturbing because the mechanical asphyxiation is described as possibly being a chokehold, which is kind of what you described had perhaps been experienced within this family unit based on family court records.
Right. In the 2024 incident of the older son of Chantel wanting to get out of the car.
I don't know if it's consensual or not, but you're thinking that maybe the defense will try and claim that this was somehow consensual, which we have not. We really haven't gotten into the details yet because the case hasn't really been tried. It's talked about because there are all these hearings having to deal with the charges and will he be detained and then moving forward. So that's how we're getting some of this information, but I didn't even know what the defense is going to be in all of this. What I think they're starting to paint this picture, right? We're getting more and more information from the father's custody battle, begging for custody of the son, still begging for custody. This mental illness that is present, which we have only heard of ADHD and insomnia, which do not a killer make. No. What will the defense argue? That this was consensual? That Timothy's ADHD medication wasn't working? That he'd missed 2 days of blood pressure medication? Let's be clear. ADHD does not make a murderer. Missing blood pressure medication does not make a rapist. The defense might try to paint Timothy as a victim of his own biology, a troubled kid who fell through the cracks. But the evidence doesn't support that. The evidence shows a pattern of obsessive behavior, a history of red flags, and a 16-year-old who chose to rape and murder his stepsister in a cabin on a cruise ship. That's not a biological malfunction. That's a choice. And it's the same choice that led the judge to finally rule that Timothy should be detained, saying, "This is a case for forcible rape beyond clear and convincing." Timothy's alleged actions suggest a level of psychopathy and lack of remorse that raises a serious concern that Timothy can snap at any time. Snap at any time.
Shoved underneath a bed. And then it's so weird. It's described as, the life vests that you have to have in the room were kind of lined up, blocking your view of what was under the bed.
Right.
And, you basically have the accused killer who's 16 years old. And then you've got this 13-year-old that's, also is on vacation, probably not paying attention, just goes to bed kind of thing.
Yeah.
But as you said, they slept with a dead body in that room.
Right. And we're getting insights, right? We're getting insights that the alleged killer wanted to cover this up because he was aware of the consequences. But he didn't do it in a very good way. So he's not maybe really good at this. Maybe he hasn't done it before. But he certainly is aware and cognizant of the consequences when they find the body. Because that same night, The 13-year-old wanted to go to bed, but Timothy blocked him from entering the room.
Right. Said, oh, I'm changing, which probably really is code for I'm moving a body around and I'm covering up, the murder that police say I committed.
And redressing her.
Oh my goodness. It's just so disturbing. So when the body was found, the carnival...
According to investigators, the CCTV cameras captured the movement in and out of the room. So the cameras are good enough to know who's going in, who's going out, and at what time, which is very important because we see Anna go in, but we never see Anna leave. So that also limits who had access to the room. And it's not like any of them could go ahead and change anything on the security cameras. Okay, so it's 7:35. Security cameras captured Timothy entering the cabin. 2 minutes later, Anna enters the cabin. This is the last time that security cameras captured her alive. Let's pause on that. Anna enters the cabin at 7:37 p.m. She's alive. The 13-year-old sees her at 7:51. She's fine. Then at 10:13 p.m., Timothy opens the door and looks both ways. That's a 2-hour window where something happened in that cabin. We know from the autopsy that Anna was sexually assaulted and strangled. We know from the semen evidence that Timothy was in that room. We know from the surveillance footage that no one else entered that room in those 2 hours. But here's the question that echoes. Did Anna know in her final moments that the person who had been creeping on her for a year was the one killing her? The evidence suggests she did. And that makes this not just a murder, it makes it a final act of terror.
As more evidence and data has come forward and stories are changing, people are aligning themselves with other people, different step-grandmothers are talking, aunts are coming out and talking, and it's changing the way that everybody's perceiving this and moving forward with this and who they're siding with.
Mm-hmm.
But I am on one side, justice.
Yes, I agree with you. Justice, absolutely. So Anna's grandparents told ABC News that Timothy told them that he didn't remember anything. Do you believe that's true, that he blocked it out?
Bullshit.
Okay.
I mean, if we want to talk about real dissociation from trauma,
yeah,
it doesn't look like that. Right? This is litigation induced malingering. This is not true. He was present, he was alert, he was aware. It was a couple minutes. He was in the bedroom. A couple minutes later, she comes in. He's seen blocking the brother. He's checking the hallway. He's moving the phone. He's placing the life vests. That is not dissociation. And the span of that is also way too long to be in a dissociative state, especially when there's no notable history of dissociation as well. And missing your blood pressure medication for 2 nights is not going to lead to dissociation either. The only thing I can possibly see that would is absolutely intense vengeance and rage because he wanted her and she slept with somebody else.
The grandmother also told...
So Timothy is currently in the custody of the Citrus County Jail, and he's expecting to undergo mental evaluation, and then he will be transferred to a juvenile facility in Miami-Dade West Metro, a detention center there by July 10th. He will be moved. So, they don't want him housed with adult criminals because that could be incredibly dangerous for him. So it makes sense for him to be in a juvenile detention center, which I'm sure is also, can be a rough and scary place, but there are consequences to actions. As I always say, Timothy's trial has been set for September, which is really soon, and he faces a maximum of life in prison. Timothy Hudson is now in custody, but he wasn't always. Initially, he was charged as a juvenile, and under the Federal Juvenile Detention Act, the judge cited guidelines that worked in his favor. Timothy stayed out of custody for months. He was sent to live with his uncle on the other side of Florida. He walked free while Anna's family grieved, while the evidence piled up, while the judge deliberated. But here's the thing about the snap at any time refrain. It took a federal judge months to reach that conclusion. And in that time, Timothy was not in a cell. He was not in a facility. He was living with his uncle, and he was free. The question is, in those months of freedom, what did Timothy do? What was he thinking? and what might have happened if the judge had made that decision earlier. Those are the kinds of questions that keep prosecutors up at night, and that should keep us all asking.
And they're wearing body cams. And the Kempners and everyone, they're in this room because Anna's just been found dead. And the cameras capture Timothy walking past. He doesn't look in, he doesn't stop, and he doesn't ask anyone what's going on. It's his room.
Right.
Circumstantial, to me, that's huge.
Significant. I mean, it makes me think of two things. Psychopathy, return to the scene of the crime for more stimulation, more knowledge, but also callousness, disregard for empathy. It did not care, just wanted to make sure, just wanted to make sure of what was going on.
And then we have this 4-year custody battle with the father, Timothy's father, saying there is some mental health problem that is not being properly cared for by the mother. These are the allegations. So we have all of these red flags, but they're not quite moving forward enough to prevent a Carnival Cruise group room with a bunch of teenagers. Anna's family wanted Timothy locked up. They said so publicly. The mother of the accused even said she wasn't comfortable with him being out. But here's the tragedy. No one acted soon enough. Not the parents, not the court, not the system. There were red flags everywhere. The FaceTime incident, the obsession, the isolation, the custody battles, the allegations of untreated mental illness. But everyone hoped the problem would solve itself. Instead, it escalated into a rape and murder on a cruise ship. And that's the pattern we see too often. A system that waits until it's too late to intervene, and a family that can't imagine the worst case scenario until it's already happened.
Because he didn't want to move with the family once they had just been married. And they had to hold him down. He was going to jump out of a moving car. They put him in a chokehold. So now we have Timothy, who seems like a gullible, susceptible child, just witnessed how you hold someone down.
Right. The medical examiner also said that there was significant bruising to her neck and there were broken blood vessels in the eyes and the face. And the autopsy confirmed that Anna was sexually assaulted before her death. DNA was taken for a rape kit. Also, samples from fingernails were taken. And Timothy's semen was identified.
Mm-hmm. It's horrifying.
That is very strong evidence.
Yes. And it wasn't mutual because of all the evidence we have leading up to her saying she wanted away from this guy.
Mm-hmm. Because you're thinking that maybe the defense will try and claim that this was somehow consensual.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't take your ADHD medicine and you miss your sleep medicine, which really it's not sleep medicine. He was on blood pressure medicine, off-label use, calms you down, you sleep a little better, and he didn't take it because he fell asleep on his own. So let's just squash all that. It wasn't like he was on Ambien and hallucinated this. None of this paints the picture of someone who would violently rape and kill someone, right? The picture I see is this longevity is the 1 year of him obsessing over her, creeping around her, following her around the house, this isolated boy at school. The defense tried to say Timothy had untreated mental illness, that he'd missed his medication. The judge didn't buy it. The forensic psychologist on the podcast didn't buy it. ADHD and insomnia don't make a killer. What makes a killer is a year of obsession, a pattern of predatory behavior, and a moment of rage when Timothy realized Anna had slept with someone else consensually. That's not a medical condition, that's a choice. And that choice led to the rape and murder of an 18-year-old woman who had done nothing wrong.
None of this paints the picture of someone who would violently rape and kill someone. right? The picture I see is this longevity, is the 1 year of him obsessing over her, creeping around her, following her around the house, this isolated boy at school. You have no one talking who really knew him, right? The father saying there's an untreated mental illness. And then Anna sleeps with another teenager consensually on the cruise ship. And then we have the moment, this is my interpretation, of Timothy saying, if I can't have her, no one can.
That could have enraged him.
And so there's your defense argument. Maybe an emotional crisis. Maybe not guilty by reason of insanity, but we do have the covering of the crime.
And maybe what was on the phone, which would have...
Judge Edwin Torres noted that about what prosecutors were seeking here and said, quote, "This is a case for a forcible. This case for forcible rape is beyond clear and convincing," and also noted that Timothy's alleged actions suggest a level of psychopathy and lack of remorse that by itself raises a serious concern that Timothy can snap at any time despite the well-meaning and serious efforts of his caretakers, not even his parents, to make sure that that doesn't happen again. The judge was clear. Forcible rape is beyond clear and convincing. The evidence is overwhelming. Semen identified, DNA recovered, fingernail scrapings, a digital trail, a timeline, a cover-up, and yet Timothy walked free for months. Why? Because the system protected him as a juvenile. And when prosecutors asked to detain him, the judge cited guidelines that said not to lock up young people. Those guidelines are meant to protect children, but in this case, they protected a child who had allegedly raped and murdered another child. The judge eventually reversed his decision, but not before Anna's family spent months watching her killer walk free. That's the system we have, and it can snap at any time in favor of the wrong person.
Put that configuration of male-female together in a small cabin.
There were a lot of red flags, but I think the question, and we'll find this out in trial, is if they were aware of the red flags. Because you wouldn't assume a rape and a murder would occur by putting your 3 teens together.
Right.
Right? That doesn't happen often. But we have now learned of a lot